So let me just set the stage. Many times when I talk business with someone and I want to understand what ideas that they have, regardless, sometimes they have some money, sometimes they're thinking of it as a future endeavor. Doesn't really matter. What I usually come to realize is that a lot of Kenyans and Africans by extension don't think outside the box in terms of the businesses they can do. So someone would say, let me start a hotel. Someone would say, let me start a butchery, let me start a kinyozi, let me start a supermarket or a small mini mart, and so on and so forth. And we've seen a lot of the times in the Kenyan space, if someone is working for you, like in the case of Digital for Africa, someone is helping you build websites as we do build websites or doing analytics, the likelihood of them opening something similar once they leave your business, if they were to be an entrepreneur, is very high. Meaning, when we come to solving niches, we almost never go there. You would find in one neighborhood, there is an over-concentration of almost the same types of businesses, and it's cut across throughout the country. A good example is a liquor store. Go to Kasarani, you will find a liquor store almost in every building. If you go to, take another example, maybe Nairobi West, you'll find almost the same thing happening in every corner, in every street corner. So the conversation I wanted to drive, and the main question is, and this is more advice to someone who's thinking about starting a business as opposed to a particular niche. If money wasn't the obstacle, and you either had some funding, either from yourself or from a VC, what business would you start? So that's something we can get to hear what you guys think. And it doesn't really matter about the industry. It could be tech, it could be manufacturing, it could be anything. What business would you start? So the main question is, if funding wasn't an obstacle, and in most cases it's never an obstacle. Yes, it can be a hurdle, but you can actually bootstrap and get something done or find the necessary funding from external sources. What biashara would you think about? But keeping in mind that we are helping people understand that you don't have to be kawaida and start your butcher. Yes, you can start a butchery, fine, but either make it unique or go into a market that is not served. Let's say people are selling beef in a particular market and you go in and sell goat meat. That's an example. So we can start with you as you think about the same question.
So are we now?
We are recording, yeah.
So let's go for it then. Yeah. Personally, when I think about innovation, and in an area that I have a passion for fixing, is if you look at real estate in Kenya or housing in Kenya, especially for homes, you find there isn't a lot of innovation around it. It's either an apartment, a bungalow, a mansionette, but there isn't a lot of thinking around beyond the house. What are the human needs? If you look at Nairobi, there's a lot of blocks, cabros, or bad roads, and that kind of a thing. So there isn't someone who is thinking, how can I make my loans within the apartment or an estate, so that if, like I go to Runda, there's a friend of mine who lives in Runda, and I go there quite often. You find that the place is very nice in terms of the ambience and the look and feel. I'm not even talking about the homes. I'm talking about the streets. Maybe the roads are not as smooth, but you realize there's a lot of vegetation and greening and landscaping that's very welcoming. You feel like you are in a different part of Kenya, or you are not even in Kenya. Sometimes you forget. And maybe when you hit a pothole or when you see a pothole, that's when you remember I'm in Africa. But my point is, if money was not an obstacle to me, I would start a real estate business that focuses on building homes, but thinking around the entire experience of a home rather than just the look and feel, the interiors of the home. So I'll ensure I'm thinking about all the human needs in terms of course, school, and amenities like water and sewage and all that. But mostly I'm thinking around making the place habitable. Yeah, in the sense that I want a place where someone, once you come to that estate, you'll find there is a gym. Within that estate, if I want to buy a piece of bread, my friend who lives in Runda, he tells me, he takes his Mercedes Benz and goes all the way to village market to look for a bread. And he drives quite a distance to go to where the bread is available. As you can see, there is something missing. Someone didn't think, by the way, these people who are living in Runda, and I'm just giving Runda as an example, there are a lot of estates where someone has to really go very far. So, but when you look at real estate in Kenya, a lot of it is just about the interiors, the look and feel of the house. There isn't things like, where is a gym where people can go and ventilate and release their emotions. I went to an estate next to the airport, Nyayo Estate, and I found there are trees within an estate. A lot of greening, not just the flowers and the very nice gardens, but there are also trees. You feel like, wow, there are birds around, and there's a lot of very nice environment. Even it's good for your mental well-being. You feel like, I want to go home because it's very hospitable. There is a school within that estate. There is a swimming pool within that estate. And it's very nice. So I'll think around real estate, because the way I feel, almost every place where you hear it's very nice and you go there and you feel, and you look for their needs, the human needs, yeah, you find there are a lot of things that are missing, and you feel, wow, nice house, but I have to go very far. I know, for example, someone who lives here at Riverside, but he goes very far to look for a gym, for example, because whoever did that apartment didn't think about how will these people do some jogging and all that. Yeah, so I'll think about those things: the environment. The mental well-being is not just the ambience of the place, but also things like gym, a place where someone can go even read a book, or a place where you have a view of the city if it is an apartment. Because you see, there are estates where you go and you feel you are stressed, yet inside the house is very nice. But there are a lot of things that are making me feel I'm at home. I want to go at home because I'll relax. There are birds around, there are trees, there's a lot of good gardening and very good landscaping, flowers, all those things are things that I will innovate around in real estate and make something very distinct and very interesting. Because in Kenya, I think a lot of real estate is just talking about the house itself. Yeah, and they leave out that element of all the needs of a human being. A shop, where kids can go to school, a place where I can go and have some physical activity. There's an estate also I went and I saw, they have a place where you can play some different sports. Yeah, they have created a place where you can play within the estate. It's a closed estate. You go there, there is a place where young people can play this type of sport, There's a gym, those kinds of things. So that's what I will do.
Now, okay. I think also, maybe just to add on to your point, a lot of our country, if you think of Nairobi, how many parks are in Nairobi? We serve a population of about 9-10 million, close to 10 million. But if we leave out Uhuru Park,
Nairobi Walk,
City Park, as the parks are so limited to the point if someone is living even in along Thika Road, they would have to come all the way to Uhuru Park, the other side of town, to be able to access a park. So I think your point is very valid.
Yeah,
what about you? What do you think, if money wasn't an obstacle, Fiona, how would you go about, what business would you start?
If money was not an obstacle, I think I would start a business. I will wear my data scientist hat on this and reflect back on the happenings of this week in our country. So if I was to have money, it's not an issue, and I don't get a lot of pushback, I would start a business that would basically be passing through especially government reports. So the very interesting thing that happened this week, there was the budget allocation whole story that was going about. So someone made an allegation that someone else is being given a larger percentage of the share, and that is why they're being able to progress their area. People went, found a government report, just that it was in PDF. They got the figures and they said, no, that is not at all what has been happening. So that will make us be making informed decisions, especially political decisions, in terms of who are you picking to serve you. So it would be, I would have a tool that consolidates all the government reports, and then you can be able to either visualize it, interact with it, because people do not consume PDF reports unless you take someone through it or it's an interactive kind of thing. More times than not, no one is going to consume that. But if we had a place, especially for our country, especially the way it is now, you have a tool that consolidates all the government reports. We can say our energy sector has been moving like this. KPLC is saying they want to add they have something we need to pass down to the consumer. Can we actually be able to track this is what has been happening, and now we can also see this is why this cost is being passed down to the consumer? Because with government agencies or whatever they do, it always trickles down to the citizen. Sisi ndio tutaumia. Fortunately, we're the ones who are going to feel the pain of whatever decisions that they do make. So if we could be coming from a standpoint that this is the data there is, we can go and actually show this is the tool, this has been the progress of this. We do not understand why you're saying you need to tax us more, you need to do what, you need to do what. So that also as a person, you're making a very informed decision. You're not just going on the ballot, you're saying, yeah, this guy had a nice manifesto and he was in office for the last 10 years. Actually, what did he actually, was he able to do? So that when you're going to put your tick, you're standing behind someone with data, you're knowing, okay, it's proven that they have this track record of this and this and this and this, so this is who I want to be. That's what I want.
I have a follow-up question on that. I think one of the challenges, or what's not clear, is how you would monetize such a platform. Would you charge people for accessing the platform? Where's the money coming from? In such a situation, if you're analyzing government reports, I would assume the government reports are public. So where would the money come from?
The conversation was if you had money and you'd want to start a business, did it say it has to be a profitable business? But anyway, it could be a tool that can also be utilized by other governments for their own kind of reports. So it is a tool that you can actually sell at the end of it.
Okay.
But I think for that one, for me, it will be more of how can I solve a problem within my country that I know is a very big point. I wouldn't be looking per se at
For
it
the
as
return.
it's not per se for the return of it. That's why I said I'm going to wear my data scientist hat. But if I had money and there's no pushback from government bodies, I think that's something I would actually want to look into.
Okay, for me, if I were to answer the same question, what would I do if money wasn't the obstacle? I'd go and just, a starting point would be all of the things that we import. Or I'd pick a few things that we import and see if we can be able to do it here locally. If you look around us, even right now in this room, the glasses probably came from China. This laptop, America or China, one of the two. This TV came from, it's not, almost nothing is developed
Made in Kenya.
or created in Kenya. And if you go to your supermarket, someone is doing some analysis and saying, out of 1,000 shillings that we spend, you're spending about 500 shillings in China. Think about, it's maybe the loaf of bread is what is baked here. But even the plastic that wraps that loaf of bread could be coming from China. So I believe that instead of going and starting what I would call the cliche businesses, you start your kinyozi, you start your butchery, you start your supermarket, the opportunity would lie in what can we create here home locally, even if it's creating the setup or the machinery that will be able to do so. The unfortunate thing is because everything is being imported, all the money we make eventually goes out of the country. And even simple things, your toothpicks, your sometimes even plastics, as much as yes, we have local players who are doing that, your cotton buds, almost everything is imported. And you would even assume, by the way, I remember when we were doing some work with one of our clients, you'd even assume the agricultural sector is different, where we are growing locally, let's say maize, and we are eating that maize, and that's where it stops. So it's money that is circulating. But if you go to the root of it, all the inputs, almost 90%, I remember the study was showing 90% of the things that farmers use to be able to make that crop to be able to grow that respective crop, or even livestock for that matter, from start all the way to finish, 90% is from an import. So it could be either something in relation to fertilizer or whatever form of input. So I think there is a missed opportunity, and not just in Kenya, but also in the entire African context, about we over-rely on other markets. There was one of our leaders who was doing an analysis and saying, look at the day in your life and look at the products you use. Even something like your vehicle, you'll go and fuel at Total. Total is
French. Is it French?
Yeah. It is French. Yeah. Even the car itself is from Japan. So when you look at the typical Kenyan person, even from the time they woke up, they touch the phone. That phone is from China or from whichever other country. They brush their teeth. Toothpaste, Unilever, again, not a Kenyan company. All the way to when the time they are going to bed. The interactions that they have throughout the day are with companies, are with firms that are not African in any way. And I think that's one of the things that we could do better. I believe, and maybe we can hear some of your sentiments as well. I believe there is a role that government has to play in some of these things. Of course, if you are to start a business locally, and which has been happening in the past, as much as we might want to water down the situation, what has been happening in the past, you might want to start a business locally, but it's cheaper to get that produce in China. Mm-hmm. So would you go that route? And even if you started it locally without the necessary incentives or support, could be incentive in whatever way, then the raw material, either taxes, whatever it may be, without the necessary support, consumers would go where it makes sense. A good example, a sector that is, yes, very political, but at the same time, very practical. And Rwanda is a good example of how they've tried to work on this sector, is the apparel sector. You want to start Kenyan-made clothes and manufacture or actually tailor-make the clothes here in Kenya. You'll be competing with second-hand clothes from the West, mitumbas from the West. By the time you're competing with something that is 30 shillings, 50 shillings, and you want to sell a brand new t-shirt for 500 shillings, 1,000 shillings, it is almost impossible to compete. And maybe that's where now government would come into play. But again, that's a political conversation, because again, Mutumbas or the Mutumba industry in general supports quite a number of people in this country. It's a big economic contributor to our country. But the bottom line being, how can we be able to also, what's the role of government, or what other factors can be able to aid the situation where we do more in the country, we create more businesses, we cover more niche sectors or products or areas that have not been thought about. Francis?
Just let me go. So this is actually an interesting conversation I've had with someone before, and the challenge that they posed was, for example, we were talking about toothpicks. Yes, we do import toothpicks. We don't produce them here. Now, the question they asked was, as Kenyans, where we are now, and just the way the world is moving fast, it's going forward really fast. Will it be worthwhile to start a toothpick industry here, as opposed to continue to doing the import, but then we think around innovation, what new products can we be able to create here? So my question to you would be, what product do you think would fit into that profile, such that setting up a toothpicks industry here is going to take a while, and before it stabilizes and we can say, okay, we've produced toothpick number one? Will it be worthwhile, the resources that have gone into it vis-a-vis just the importing? But for what we're trying to do here, we start with some innovative product, not, it's not just we're taking manufacturing from point A to point B. What product do you think we fall in that category?
What I've seen other markets do and do very well. Take an example of Germany, take an example of Japan. Almost every vehicle, if you think about those two countries, majority of the manufacturing of any vehicle in the world is concentrated in those two countries. If you take Japan, the list is very long.
Endless.
Take Germany, the list is very long. So you'd find some countries would say, or they would be able to concentrate on a certain line in manufacturing and be very good at it in such a way it overcompensates on these other sectors. Even if they say they import everything else, those sectors can be able to make that that economy very stable, and the deficit will not be there of imports versus exports. The other country or the other economy we can think about, which is very similar to the Japan, Germany case study, would be something like the UAE or the Arabs, especially the ones who export oil. That's the main product they export. And in some cases, crude oil, not even refined oil. Almost nothing else. Almost nothing else. But those economies are okay. They would export that one thing, but they would import everything else. They would import everything else. But because the deficit is not there, they are not spending more outside their country than what it is that is coming inside their country. It becomes an easier conversation to have. So more or less, it is not, we need to make toothpicks here. It's, we need to be able to fix that.
The deficit, the
deficit.
crazy deficit.
Yeah, the trade deficit.
Actually, it's the trade deficit.
Yeah,
yes.
the trade deficit. Yes, we could go the innovation route, but also one way to be able to get to that deficit, reduce the deficit burden, is ask ourselves, are there products which are fairly simple to do and we can do them here? And a good example is now a product like this, a glass. The raw materials needed to make that, we do not need to, it's the normal sand that we use,
yeah.
and a few other raw materials that are used to be able to make such a glass. So the only thing that we need is the right incentives and the entrepreneurial spirit, and they will just bring the machineries from wherever it is that they are sold, be it China, be it Germany, doesn't matter. Then they set up the facility and they are making that. And so long as it is competitive in such a way, you can be able to sell that glass cheaper than what you would find. Or we find a way of being able to control where that such a produce is bought. Either we ban the export, like what Trump is doing very radically. We ban exports of other products. So we just find a clever way of making sure that we are supporting the local industry. So I think it's not entirely black and white, where it's let's make serviettes and toothpicks here and the plastic forks and all that. It's not really about the product, but fixing the deficit, in my view. And we can do that in several ways. Francis, what do you think?
That's brilliant. The other perspective I have around innovation, it's a good question that you had asked recently during the Nation Digital Summit. What makes a lot of startups in Kenya to collapse? Other than M-Pesa, if you ask any person in Kenya, they will struggle to find a startup that has worked very well. You will take some time before you can say, this one founded in Kenya, scale, and they are doing well. So one of the problems that we have in Kenya, which I think we can learn from the US, is the VC ecosystem. People who are willing to invest in risky business ideas, and here we're talking about venture capitalists, who are able to inject into ideas like yours for visualizing government reports and making them accessible, digestible, and easy to consume, and help people with the interpretation. So my view is, if I had unlimited resources, I would be a VC, and I would invest. A lot of the ideas that we are talking about here, they will never see the light of day, because you go to the bank, they tell you your working capital, security, do you have a commercial property? They don't want even land, because they cannot be able to sell it very fast. They want something like a vehicle which is new, not 80 years old and older. So you see, that's why a lot of African innovations, they are dead on arrival. Because if you look at the innovation ecosystem in America is very developed. A lot of that is because of two factors: funding or access to capital and talent. Educated, skilled people, but also the policies of the US, as much as it could be changing under the new administration. It has always been pro inviting the best of the world from India, from China. If you look at the AI companies right now, if you see the launches of these new products by OpenAI, Anthropic, and all that, you'll see there are Chinese who have been educated in the US and they are not willing to go back to China. So I'll be a VC and heavily invest in Kenyan businesses, Kenyan ideas to solve the problems that we have. And there are a lot of problems. Startups don't die in Kenya for lack of ideas. They don't die for lack of problems to solve. The problems are there. But where is the funding? Because the typical funding model in Kenya, you have to go to a bank, or you go to a circle, or you do savings. If you are working in a large organization and you have some good income, you save for many years and then you exit and then you have some working capital to run the business. So there isn't a strong VC ecosystem or culture, or people who are willing to take risks and invest in businesses, new ideas, and new innovations. I don't know what you think about around that.
Yeah, I think in one way or the other, we are going back to the environmental factors that affect the business environment in various economies in Africa. And you stated something very well, the VC ecosystem. We were talking not so long ago about the political environment. So I think all these things have to work very well. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we're looking at America as a case study. Think about it. How many companies outside of the Silicon Valley ecosystem have succeeded? You find just a few, maybe something like Spotify.
Outliers.
Yeah, there's just a few around the world. Zoho in India. Yeah, but they are not so many to the point where we are saying still America is number one in terms of, or rather the Silicon Valley is number one in terms of innovation, especially for tech. We can argue for these other things that there's some distribution, but especially for tech, they are leading the pack. So I think it's the environmental factors is a big deal, but we need to ask ourselves also as Africans, how can we sort that out for our own self? If we say there's no hope, like right now, the example that we usually give when in some of our trainings, and we say you have 24 hours in a day and you're using all that time. So if you had the same amount of money and you had to use it every day, what would you do? So if, let's say right now, we just give a figure, $10 million, put that money somewhere. What would you do? And you had to use that money. That money had to be used somewhere. What would you do? Looking at, yes, you need to do a business, you need to make a risk, but also a calculated risk. And you are thinking of getting a return. Or would you put that money? Just be honest. Assuming now here's the money. We've placed it on the table. You take your 10, you take your 10, I take my 10. We have to spend that money. Would you spend that money in a business currently, or would you put that money away and put it in an investment and just let it sleep?
Well, in terms of investment decisions, they normally have this issue of diversifying your investment portfolio. You analyze based on risk and reward, the returns that you can get. Because if you put your money, for example, a friend of mine who came outside, who was working abroad for many years, came back, and they put their money into the stocks. Yeah,
Which stocks?
Yeah, Kenyan
Local
stock,
NSE
the local,
stocks.
the Nairobi Stock Exchange. They bought they invested in two companies. But when you look at stocks, the return could be very high, but also it could be minus. You could actually lose everything or lose the value of the 10 million.
Amount,
So, but my point is, if you are making a rational decision in terms of investment, you would have to diversify. Take a startup here and invest. Look at the problem they are solving, a business model, and invest, especially if it is something that affects a lot of people and people are willing to buy. That would be my rationale on investing in a startup. I would also look at a business that has a big problem. They have a good team and good management, and the only challenge they have is scaling, because maybe they don't have enough capital to scale. Scale through technology or opening branches. And look at, and I've been seeing those kinds of businesses in Kenya. There are businesses that are doing well. But you see, if this person just got some backup, financial backup, this is someone who has a lot of future. The business is scalable, customers are coming, they have a very high retention rate. I remember one of them, they told us the retention rate is about 60%. Businesses that is coming from existing customer or through referral, you can see there is some value that is being created there. So I look at those kinds of things. So I'll diversify my investment so that I'm not putting all the eggs in one basket. So that I'm balanced. Startup here, a business that is an SME, small and medium size, has potential. You look at them 10 years and you see, if I injected $1 million, they have a lot of future if they can scale through tech. They can hire some good talent here and there, they will be able to take off and be profitable. So I look at that, but I will also look at mature companies that have very good dividends. There are banks in Kenya like I&M that have a lot of future. That's a company I would invest in as well. In terms of tech, the tech works well. The customer experience is fairly good. The technology is creating some virality around referral. A lot of people saying, hey, look at I&M, look at I&M. So that's something that I will consider as well, to invest, to buy their stocks for future growth of the stock, but also for the dividends that they give. So I'll do a keen analysis of the stock market in Kenya and look at which are companies that give very good dividends. Because you don't have to get a return based on the value of the stock growing substantially. It could also be through the dividends that they pay.
True. Spend all your money.
Spend all my money today as if it's my 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
Honestly, I would invest most of it. So I'm actually learning from this conversation, because if
You
it is
spend.
me, no, I'm going to just put it somewhere, either in a money market or something. Just
Let it
let
sleep
it
and
sit
make
and
money.
be doing its thing. So this is a good one. I'm learning, because that's
And the money
what-
market, they say, is like for someone who is very someone who is very sensitive about risk.
risk averse.
They
that's
want
me.
just to retain the money without losing the
Beat inflation,
initial
technically.
capital. Yes.
Exactly.
Because
It's
even
gaining
the money
its
market right now, 7%, 8%, 11%. The crazy times when the interest rates were very high and the earnings were for money markets were very insane.
Yeah.
It's no longer the same right now. So
Oh.
and money market will be like a capital preservation strategy, because you want something else, you want to do with this money
something else in the
in
future. I'll
one year or
figure
6 months.
something about it.
So
Yeah, but I think you do have a point. I follow Berkshire, Warren Buffett's company a lot. One of the things I have noticed is they have about close to $150 billion in the bank. The pesa tu imelala, and they were being asked, why are you not buying stocks? You can buy stocks, you can do so many things with that money. And they keep on telling themselves, the level we have gotten to, the money that we have, if you were to get a return, if you are getting 0.001% of that money, it doesn't make sense. You'd rather just keep it and wait for the best investment that can give you the
in
best
future.
return. So that's their mentality. So I agree with you on that, because I've seen also companies do the same, take the same strategy. Not every VC is spending all their money. Not every company at that level is also spending all their money. They are also being very conservative and taking the time to find the right sort of investment. And sometimes even they're exiting when you think that other people are buying the stock, then they are leaving, like what they did with Apple.
also on the innovation, before I forget that line of thought, there are new special funds that have been innovated by the regulators in Kenya. And we have some clients that are doing that already. like the Faida Investment Bank special fund, the OAK special fund, or the Mansa X
By
special
SIB,
fund,
yeah.
where they give you a return of up to 20% per annum. They are beating real estate, they are beating money markets, they are beating a lot of stocks, they are beating a lot of
And it's because of
dividends.
diversification. They actually spread the portfolio very wide.
Yeah, as much as there's always that risk of I may lose all the money, but their track record, specifically the OAK special fund and the Mansa X special fund, they seem to be doing very well, and there's a lot of appetite.
Yeah.
The other day, Faida was reporting they have now an investment portfolio of 2 billion in their OAK special fund in less than 12 months of operations. They haven't finished 2 years. So there is still some opportunity of some very special investment tools that seems to be working in Kenya, in Africa, and giving you a return. The last time Faida investment, they were talking about 29%. You know, they guarantee you 20, but they promise you 20.
That 9
But
it can go
they are going
up
all the
to
way up to 29.
Yeah.
That's a place where I will invest the $10 million.
It's true, by the way. It's true.
Yeah.
So I have a different sentiment. If I had the 10 million, I'd put it in manufacturing. And the reason why I say that is because of some recent news that I saw. In Nigeria, of course, we all know Dangote. There is a refinery that has been recently launched. We also know that Nigeria produces some oil, some crude oil.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing that was happening for the longest time was that oil was going elsewhere, being refined and coming back. Like our situation with coffee. Well, tea is a bit different, but you can imagine the coffee farmer is not able to afford coffee because coffee is
goes
it's
processed.
exported.
By the time it comes
by
back,
the
it's
time
been
it comes back,
packaged.
it's a different cost altogether, and it's not the same process as we undergo with tea. So, because of that one refinery, the economic situation in Nigeria has changed. They can be able to produce, refine their own oil and sell it in such a way that money just revolves within the economy. And if you think about several products in our country, also the same, we don't have oil, but you would find that we are just producers of the raw material. Even looking at DRC, with all the resources that they have, they're not able to capitalize, and they have some of the most important resources for these tech companies in the case of the chips which are being built.
For all laptops and
exactly.
phones and all that. They
So
come from that.
imagine something in line
batteries
with
as well.
manufacturing that is there. In such a way the chip is made there. Or at least a part of the chip is made there, even if it's not the whole thing. By the time it's living there, there's some value that has been done. So I always feel that there's a lot of opportunity at that layer of manufacturing, at that layer of high-level processing that we do not do at all in the African context. And that's why even companies such as you were mentioning, Mansa X or Faida, those investments that they do mostly are usually a widespread portfolio in global markets. It's never a Kenyan thing. It's usually a global, like Mansa X, for example, they have a USD option, they have a Kenyan option. And it's usually global markets and the global trade kind of ecosystem. And that's where they make their money. Because when you look at Africa, the options are limited. So to be able also to make African investments lucrative, I think that level of manufacture is what needs to be sorted. And I'd put 100% of my money there. A few years ago, when we were doing the first event for Gatsby Africa Kenya Markets Trust back then for what we were calling the Meat Expo. What I came to realize is even the facilities, if you wanted to export meat, even the facilities, let's say it's not your normal butcher slaughterhouse, even the facilities that are needed are very unique. And the money that they were saying, the money that you need to be able to set up something that will be able to give you the quality that you would be able to export is about $7 million as per that computation that we were doing that time. I was like, all you need is about 7 million. Okay, fine. So if by some miracle we're able to get that money and just put it, we can be able to do something different. And maybe the other hurdle would be, where do we get the raw material? Where do we get now the produce so that we're able to export? Which farmers do we support and that sort of an. So I know investments usually are good because you can make passive income, but maybe I'm the one who likes sweat and I like the hard things. But I think that's where a lot of the opportunities and the beauty is it's not capped at 25x. It's usually out 25%. It can even go beyond 30 and even beyond to several multiples of the investment that you made. But anyway, we can go into some quick final sentiments, then we conclude.
Yeah, I think there is. I would conclude this conversation by saying we are not in a hopeless situation that there is no hope, as you had alluded. I still feel there are opportunities. Dangote has done it. How did he do it? We can learn lessons. We may not be doing cement. Could be looking at manufacturing in different sector in Kenya, around farming, because Kenya is heavily dependent on farming, and see what investment can be done there. So I am personally very optimistic about the innovation space in Kenya. As much as maybe I don't want to talk about the hopelessness of the political situation, but I'm still hopeful about the innovation space in Kenya, because you can see, as we have seen, Faida investment, that's an innovation that was incepted here in Kenya, and it is working. So I'm still optimistic about innovation and solving problems here in Kenya by Kenya, and also exporting this value outside. Like as you say, these OG special funds or these special high return investments, these are Kenyans who are based in Kenya, but looking at opportunities outside and getting those rewards, because when that money is sent as dividends or as a return on investment, it comes back to Kenya and it helps the ecosystem. So, but I'm very keen on my strong call to action there, or my key takeaway is we can do a lot with creating ecosystems where we are supporting local innovations, and we support the people who have ideas and test and release products that are interacting with customers and see, because even before the OG Special Fund and the Mansa X, there was a lot of testing that was happening. And I'm sure there's money that was injected, just like M-Pesa is a Vodafone of the UK that injected the initial seed capital to ensure the idea happened. Perhaps if M-Pesa didn't have that kind of money to test the idea, it will not have worked. So I'm still big on putting money, VC money, by Africans, not waiting for people, not waiting for Trump or Silicon Valley, just Black African investors to invest in Kenyan or African startups and see where it goes. There are enough problems to be solved. And there are consumers in terms of population. There are a lot of needs. People have a lot of needs, whether it is food, clothing, education, healthcare. There are a lot of problems to be solved. So let's be optimistic. Let's not paint a miserable. I can paint a miserable future in Kenyan politics, because things are not becoming better. But on the innovation side, let's not give up on Africa. Let's learn from Dangote. Let's learn from Faida Investment Bank. Let's learn from I&M Bank. Why are they doing well in terms of tech, customer experience, and the return on investment of that bank? Mansa X. Let's learn from those experiences and see what we can do on the innovation side.
Okay. Final remarks?
Final remarks, I think I would say for our country, it's to be more patriotic in terms of, if we decide we are manufacturing this glass in Kenya, maybe perhaps costing just a bit more, not a crazy margin, we would be, as Kenyans, be proud to say, yes, I do want to buy this Kenyan product. So I think as Kenyans, for us to be able to look at that trade deficit, we're saying we're manufacturing something here instead of importing it, then we need to be more patriotic as Kenyans, so that we're standing behind our products. We're not just consuming other people's, because it's also a state of mind we're used to. This is just how things work. So can we do something different? Be patriotic, support your local brands.
I think the challenge there would be, we need to have a label for local brands.
And it is there, made in Kenya. If you look at a supermarket, a lot of labels, and there is an organization in Kenya that promotes made in Kenya, and they when you
Ah,
work with them, you can see made in Kenya and it has a Kenyan logo. I'm
like a
normally
flag
very
or
keen.
something.
Yes, it has actually a Kenyan flag. You look
Yeah,
very
that's
keenly
interesting.
in the supermarket, just look at the different products and you will see made in Kenya. I know it has become now a political conversation in the US and Canada, where now Canadians are avoiding to stock American products because of the politics and the
Yeah,
new
yeah, yeah.
administration. But honestly, I am a big I would support your idea around let's
Let's
support
buy
local.
and build Kenya.
Yes, buy and build Kenya.
Bad build
Yeah,
Kenya.
yeah, it's true, it's true. I think about that. As you said, there's hope, but we also need to support a lot of our local talent in making sure that these things come to fruition. Just before I go to my final remarks, I remember there's a time where we really wanted to support local IT firm hosting. Simple example is hosting. But as much as yes, you want to support someone who's locally, the kind of quality they give you versus someone who's international is very different. So I need there is that support that we need to give as much as we want to buy Kenya, and maybe improve the quality to a standard that is international, that we can be able to compete at a global level. Yeah, but final remarks, I would say, just going back to our initial conversation, our main question. Let's think about niches and the problems that can be solved, as opposed to the cliche businesses that we always think about. We avoid, well, it's fine if it's the need is there or the demand is there. You can create that hotel or start that hotel. Excuse me. But we avoid the kawaida businesses, the hotels, the salons, the mini marts. There are so many businesses that everyone thinks of starting, and when you ask yourself the things that have not been solved, is anyone solving them? You almost find that there's no one solving them. So I believe there's an opportunity in thinking about niche products, niche businesses, niche items which are not being created here locally, and we make them.
Or
Just-
even innovate around even the very specific, the very boring businesses that you're talking about. Bring innovation in them. Maybe you're paying differently. There is an innovation around it that makes it
Unique.
Unique.
Different
Yeah.
from
so it's
the-
not boring.
It's a value
It's
add.
like what I was saying in real estate. Houses are there, but if you think about the entire experience of a human being, where will I shop? Can I go to a gym? You are now innovating. You're thinking around the needs of housing, but you're looking at the needs of a human being and the health of a person holistically. So there are still opportunities around even the boring, even if it is cereals, there can be an idea around how do you make cereals, how can you make the cereals business interesting? And that's a very good question to ask.
Even
I
there's
think-
value add. You can even do value add. Because someone was saying instead of selling the banana, some people are selling
a smoothie or
Unga.
the ujipa,
the unga.
Milled, dried
Yes.
and milled bananas.
Yes, and they can be value adds to so many products, including now the smoothies that she's talking about.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and the opportunity there is doing things differently.
I think my outro question to summarize all that would be, how do you identify a market gap? I wish we can have like a whole session on that, because identifying that market gap, identifying that problem is what will drive the innovation of how can we then solve this problem.
Maybe we can think about
start-
that.
I know
in the
that's
next
a
podcast.
conversation altogether, but this is what I would say as among the shortest ways to identify that market gap. Expose yourself as much as possible to the international market and what's happening. I know sometimes you might not have all the money to travel in such a way. You can go to China, visit, go to Japan, visit, go to Germany, visit, go to Brazil, visit. You might be stuck here in Kenya with our
problems.
our economic problems. But the internet is one big archive. And just learn what people are doing in other markets. And one of the things I enjoy personally doing is watching even videos of these manufacturing plants. Remember, there's a time I was seeing someone doing, there was a video of people who are making doormats in the US. Doormats. Hakuna kitu ingine hiyo biashara inafanya. Doormats, 100% from morning to evening. Wako sawa. they're okay, they're making money. So I think there's an element of exposure, because the more you see, the more you interact with other people around the world, the more you see a different perspective, a different line of thinking. And even you can be able to ask yourself, how can I apply such a thing in my own country? Or how can I be able to build better whatever it is that I'm seeing? That's one of the shortcuts I would encourage anyone to go about and solve that problem. So expose yourself, expose yourself, expose yourself. Yeah, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
It's good that we have had a conversation outside the typical way of thinking, which is easy because it's forcing us to think.
You have to.
And hear very different perspectives from each one of us. So very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Asante.
All
a wrap.
right, it's a wrap.